Okay, let's go ahead and install the tail gear, tail wheel gear. And the first step is going to be to take our tail wheel carbon fiber bracket, and you'll take the bushing, this guy right here, and go ahead and place that into it, just like that. And then on the bottom side, we're going to attach the nut and tighten that down. Okay, now we've got our locking collar that you'll see has a small hole here that our rod is going to go through that controls the movement of the wheel. So we're just going to kind of put that through the collar a little bit, put some Loctite on that grub screw and tighten it down. Now we've got our control rod through the collar. And then the next step we're going to do is go back to our bracket here and take our the rod for the wheel, the bent rod, place that through the bushing nut assembly, and then we're going to put our collar, snap it in on top, just like that. Now you're going to want to make sure that the axle for the wheel is perpendicular to this rod. So you want to make sure that these are perfectly perpendicular to each other, or as close as possible. That way, when the rudder's neutral, this rod will be neutral with it. And I'll show you in a minute how it's going to attach. And then when the rudder turns, it's going to turn the wheel. Okay, so if you have this off whack to begin with, the wheel's going to be turned in the wrong direction to start. So go ahead and line these up perpendicular, and then there's a grub screw right here that will tighten our axle rod into the collar. So put some Loctite on there and tighten that down as well. Now the assembly is going to mount on the plane just like that, with the pivot point of our tail gear assembly close to the pivot point of the hinge line. The further back you have this, the more responsive, or the more twitchy it's going to be, because it's getting a higher angle, whereas if it's back further, it's going to move a little bit less. So somewhere right near the pivot point or the hinge line will be good. So the next step is going to be, there's this cool little device they have here that's you can accomplish a similar thing with a ball link, but this comes with the tail gear. This is going to be drilled into here. Okay, the rod is going to go through the hole in this bracket, and this bracket allows it to pivot. So that rod is going to be able to turn back and forth in the rudder and have some radius. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up, and I'm going to use a 7/32 inch bit. Okay, that's been drilled through, and our bracket is going to slide into there. We'll use a little bit of epoxy to secure that in, and then after that's in there, we'll slide the control rod through, line up our bracket, and screw it down. So while I've got this in place, I'm going to go ahead and use my hand drill to go ahead and mark my screw locations, making sure the bracket is centered with the line of the fuselage, making a few small starter holes right in the center of each of the screw holes on the bracket. Okay, so now I can take this off. I'm going to finish tapping these, glue this in, and then we'll be ready for final assembly. Okay, I've got our bracket epoxied in with some 30-minute epoxy, and then I've got our screws placed in and almost tightened down, so secure all three of these screws. I put a little bit of thin CA into the wood to give it a good secure hold. Let that dry before putting screws in. Our last step is going to be to place the wheel on. We've got two locking collars. Slide one on the inside, put a little bit of Loctite on the grub screw again. All these metal to metal parts, unless there's a nylon nut, you want to use Loctite on. Then place the wheel on. And then finally you're going to place your last wheel collar on the outside, again with some Loctite. And you should be able to to have it spin freely without too much resistance.